What are your thoughts on this whole Bertuzzo thing? I mean, is this a guy that you would like to play? I mean, I think the Penguins are missing kind of that muscle and that nastiness on the back end, but at the same time, if you're possessing the puck a lot, you don't really need guys like that, and that's kind of what Johnston, his system promotes is the puck possession. But I am a Bertuzzo fan. Would like to see him in there, but it's tough. I mean, you have all these guys that can play in the NHL. Simone Dupré has been decent. Scuderi, I don't think he's been as terrible as he was last year, but he hasn't been great either. It's kind of a tough situation, I guess, for Mike Johnston.
It is. I mean, it's a really crowded bunch on that D line. I think that the Harrington and Ebbett thing was mostly contractual, cap wise.
Yeah.
You're saving pennies each game, basically each day that they're not on the active roster. I don't know why. Maybe just having a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of heat on a guy like Rob Scuderi, having him up here, you have a bad game, we'll throw in Scott Harrington. He's right here the next game. Maybe that was part of having him up here. Maybe not. I don't know. But it couldn't hurt. What is interesting, though, is the fact that, okay, now Harrington's gone. Bortuzzo seems like he's really close to getting back in. Who does sit? I would like to see Simone Dupré stay in that lineup, but I think if you bring Dupré, if you keep Dupré in that lineup and you take Bortuzzo and put him in and take out Scuderi, I would hope that Dupré wouldn't feel the need to play that physical, aggressive game, because what it's doing for him right now is getting him in the penalty box a lot more than he needs to be in there. We're talking about a puck-moving defenseman, guy that would be great as a possession guy. He doesn't need to be in the box. I think he's kind of overcompensating and kind of taking some really dumb penalties at times when he doesn't really need to. So maybe you take a Rob Scuderi, set him for a game, and maybe you just do a revolving door thing. But it does make for an interesting fodder going into each game.
Certainly does, and I guess it's a good problem to have. Some healthy competition, that's for sure. There's going to be a lot of guys fighting to get into that lineup. Bo Bennett's still skating on his own with Mike Kadar, so we'll see. He's probably not due back until November, but hey, November's really, I guess it's really not that far away.
Not far.
So.
Yeah.
Johnson said he's probably still a couple weeks away, so we'll be definitely following that. Hope to see Bo back as soon as we can. Certainly would be a nice addition to the lineup. But in other news, the NHL had some bad news today when Slava Voynov of the Los Angeles Kings defenseman was arrested this morning for domestic violence charges, and we all know how that's worked out with the National Football League and professional sports here and recently, and the NHL doing the right thing by suspending him indefinitely, and they'll do their own investigation, and the law will investigate as well. Apparently some people heard some screaming and things like that in the house, and Voynov was arrested, so props to the NHL for at least suspending him indefinitely and then looking at it rather than waiting for everything to all the details to come out and then try to punish him where it may be too late or anything like that. I think that was the right decision by the NHL. I think they've kind of learned what not to do based on what the NFL did.
I think everybody did. Yeah, but I'm not so sure that they wouldn't have. Maybe the Kings wouldn't have done this otherwise. I think that they would have probably suspended their player. Yeah. I think if you look back at Colorado, whenever Varlamov had the charges against him last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they suspend him kind of for a few games to figure out what was going on there, or did they not?
I'm pretty sure I remember Varlamov playing right when it was reported.
Right. I think he played.
I'm
Dallas
pretty sure he started.
Yeah, which was absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah,
absolutely. The NHL obviously has learned from the mistakes of the NFL, and there should be a zero tolerance level kind of punishment on that. Okay, you do something stupid like that. I mean, that's idiocracy. You're gonna sit, and you're not gonna get a paycheck for a while. So that is what it is. I mean, you do something stupid, you pay the price. So, which is interesting. I don't know if you've seen the Feder Tootin comments on this.
I have not.
it's been reported in, I forget what paper, I think it was a Columbus paper, where he was talking about how, and I hope I'm getting this right, maybe I'm getting this wrong, or maybe I read a fake story, I don't know, but it's probably Bub McKenzie tweeting this, but they had, it was something along the lines of, in the United States, the laws protect women too much. And any woman could say whatever they want, and it hurts the man. It's like, you should probably shut up.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say that.
You're being real stupid right now, dude, and you look like an ass. So,
yeah, it's definitely not smart to do something like that, and say something like that. Because as we've said, the NFL really screwed that one up. At least the NHL was smart about it, and we'll see how long Voynov's out. That's definitely a big loss for the Los Angeles Kings, and who knows when he will come back. And we'll see. Maybe, I don't know if details will come out or not about what happened or anything like that. But
you see earlier in the day, one of the investigative reporters in LA, they actually went to Voynov's house, and he wasn't there. And then the guy was knocking on the door, no answer. He turns around, and there's Sutter there asking, "Is he home?" No. Well, then he went up and knocks on the door himself, no answer, and he leaves.
That's funny.
Very interesting. But at least the Kings and the NHL, they're being proactive here, and that's exactly what you got to do, and you figure it out. And if he's guilty, hey, yeah, he's going to be out for even longer. But if he's not guilty, put him back in the lineup, and you let the process play itself out. It's not super detrimental to miss a couple games to figure it out right now. The Kings are going to be okay, all in all.
They will be.
But right now they do have a void to fill. And Ryan Wilson, our friend over at HockeyBuzz.com, he was writing a really interesting piece today about, okay, let's say Voynov is out for, indefinitely. He's out for a long time, and they've got a big void now to fill in their lineup, having a big-time defenseman back there. We're trying to shop Paul Martin. It just seems like perfect sense to kind of say, hey, maybe give us a guy like Justin Williams. Maybe
nice.
That's kind of what he put on his blog there. Check it out over at HockeyBuzz.com. But that seems to make a lot of sense in some ways. For Pittsburgh, they would get a big-time playoff performer, Conn Smythe winner, some guy on their team that could help them depth-wise in their top six, kind of play throughout the lineup like a Pascal Dupuis, but also has that leadership and that experience and that clutch gene that just doesn't grow on trees. I think that would make a lot of sense. It is rental for rental, though, but, maybe that's an okay thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, when they first reported the Voynov thing, I thought of that exact thing. I thought, maybe the Kings would show interest in Paul Martin, and it's not that I want to give Paul Martin away by any means, but you do have to look at the big picture if you're Jim Rutherford, I think, and it doesn't really seem like Paul Martin wants to come back to Pittsburgh, doesn't really want to sign an extension, so
doesn't. Maybe this is just me, Andy, but it doesn't really seem like he's super valued here.
I know.
Now
it's weird.
He's not really getting the power play time. Last year he was better at the power play than Chris Letang. And now he's like third on that depth chart. You got Ehrhoff, you got Letang, and those guys are going to eat up a big chunk of those power play minutes. And then Paul Martin's playing like third fiddle here. And they don't really talk so highly of him as they do the other guys on the team defensively. So it's almost like they're not even trying to build up his trade stock. They're just playing it out.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And when we saw him on the number one power play unit a little bit last season, and haven't seen really that at all this year now with Letang and Ehrhoff kind of taking over, and Mata's there as well, and Dupre's getting some time. But a lot of people really aren't talking about Paul Martin. They're talking about the Letangs and the Ehrhoffs and the Matas, and Paul Martin's a relatively solid player to have. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to put up a ton of points or going to make a lot of big hits or anything like that. He's just going to play solid defense and he'll chip in offensively too. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of seem like he's undervalued a bit, and I'm interested to see what his market value would be on the trade market, especially for the Kings if Voynov is doesn't come back for whatever reason. Maybe Paul Martin is a candidate to go there. When I was it was funny before even Ryan had posted that I was thinking about, well, the Kings, who would I want from the Kings? And Justin Williams was one of the guys that came up, somebody that they would trade, obviously not like, they're superstars. They wouldn't, someone realistic maybe Justin Williams. I mean, he's 33 years old. It's going to be a rental. He was a first round pick in 2000 by the Flyers. I had no idea that. I didn't know the Flyers had picked him in the first round.
Oh, they give all their guys to the Kings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess that's true. That's very fitting. But I think Justin Williams would be a good fit here.
I think if you look at it right now, it's absolutely this far away from the trade deadline. You're kind of looking rental for rental at this point. I mean, you get a lot of service for the rest of the year with a guy in your top six with a guy like Justin Williams, and they get a serviceable defenseman that's steady. He's an anchor back there. It's really a win for either team. I think the closer you get to the trade deadline, the more trade value that both of those guys have, especially for teams that are contenders if you're shipping them across conferences. So I think the closer we get to that trade deadline, both of those guys, their value is going to just skyrocket, especially a guy like Paul Martin, because defensemen, they're not a dime a dozen, especially like the rental kind. I mean, we saw Doug Murray a couple years ago. He was kind of a rental defenseman, and this is completely like 3 or 4 stratospheres ahead of where Doug was.
Yeah. I mean, it's the one thing is though. I mean, if Paul Martin does leave at the trade deadline, then someone's got to fill in there. So it's there's a lot of questions, I guess, and it's going to have to. Somebody's going to have to really step up, and we did talk about how there are defensemen, here, and you have Derek Pouliot, who, maybe that's a guy that I think Pouliot will probably step in next year with Martin most likely gone next year. But maybe, if Pouliot, heals up real nice and starts to play well, then, maybe Mike Johnson gives his old Portland friend a call and says, hey, you know what, let's see what you can do out here. And then, if all goes well, maybe Paul Martin is shipped and you get, a forward, because, you always told us a bunch of times that Rutherford's got plans to be aggressive, and I would only think that he would try to get a top 6 forward. That would be the only thing that would make, a huge difference to this team, because that's really what they're missing. Not that they're terrible right now there, but I don't think they could go with this team in the playoffs. I mean, I think they can do a lot better than that. So Justin Williams would be a nice fit if the right circumstances come around their trade deadline day.
It really does make a lot of sense. And if you look at the defensive prospect pool that, like you were talking about Pouliot, I mean, not only is Pouliot kind of, they do think he's NHL ready. I mean, Johnson's been on record saying that. He thinks Pouliot is NHL ready. The other guys that are NHL ready here, Scott Harrington, obviously NHL ready. He's kind of getting that Simone Dupre treatment from Dan Bosma last year, getting caught up and not really played. But from all accounts that everyone's that follows him, in Wilkes-Barre are saying, this guy's NHL ready. He's ready to make that jump. Another guy, Brian Dumoulin, this guy's NHL ready too. And next year, he's not going to pass waivers next year whenever if they try to squeeze him down through. So even if they do get a guy like Paul Martin and ship him out to like a team like Los Angeles, which makes a lot of sense because Martin will likely waive his no movement clause to go to Los Angeles. Who wouldn't? They've won 2 cups in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that wouldn't be a big stretch to say, hey, would you waive your no movement clause to go here? Yeah, duh. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great place to kind of land. But they've got options not only this season, but kind of in the future couple seasons too. The next 1 or 2 seasons, they've got guys that are absolutely ready to step up and eat some minutes in the NHL.
Yep. Should be interesting to watch. I know